Jesus Christ said some things that 2,000 years later still rock our world. Today, I want to look at one of those things. He said, blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Next, on So What? Hi, I'm Dorman, and welcome back to So What? We are continuing our study on the Beatitudes, and this week I want to start on the second Beatitude. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. What we saw in the very first week, in the very first Beatitude, looking at blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Nothing is more paradoxical to our world system than thinking that the poor are happy, because that's not what we think. In fact, most of us spend a lifetime striving to make sure that we're not poor, because we don't want to be homeless. We don't want to be without clothes. We don't want to be without choices, options where we live, what we eat, what we do. And so we really struggle. We spend most of our earthly pilgrimage trying not to be poor. And yet Jesus says, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. In fact, remember what I said is, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs and only theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Well, what we saw, of course, is that Jesus isn't blessing poverty for poverty's sake. Blessed are not the poor in purse, as A.W. Pink says. Blessed are those who are poor in spirit, those who see their spiritual condition before a holy God. Now, you'll recall I said that the Beatitudes build on each other. Today we're looking at blessed are those who mourn. Well, you will not mourn if you are not poor in spirit. Well, what is Jesus talking about? First, blessed are those who mourn. It is a present tense verb, which means Jesus is not saying blessed are those who have mourned, but those who are in a continuous state of mourning. They, and only they, shall be comforted. Again, Jesus is very emphatic. Only those who mourn will be comforted. Only those who are in a continuous state of mourning will be comforted. What kind of mourning is Jesus talking about? You'll recall when we looked at the poverty of spirit, I said that there are multiple words to describe poverty in Koine Greek. It's no different when looking at mourning and grief. In fact, there are 9 different words in the New Testament to describe mourning. Not surprisingly, the word that Jesus uses here describes the most intense kind of longing, the most intense kind of suffering, of sadness. I want you to think about human loss. You can lose a friendship that's very, very important to you. Your favorite team can lose a big game. You can lose a job, right? You can lose a bet, and you can be bummed about it. You can suffer a tremendous financial setback and lose your home. Lose everything you've spent a lifetime trying to accumulate and be on the street. Well, as difficult as those kinds of losses can be, they pale in comparison to what Jesus is talking about. In fact, as I said, this is the most intense form of grief. It is a word that's used in the Septuagint to describe Jacob's sense of loss when he learned that his son Joseph had died. That is the kind of loss we're talking about, the kind of anguish that a parent feels when they lose a child. So Jesus says, blessed, happy are those who are in a continuous state of intense mourning. They and only they shall be comforted. What in the heck is he talking about? Jesus is talking about sin. Those who mourn their sin, they and only they shall be comforted. Now remember, the Beatitudes build on each other. The poor in spirit see their condition. They see that they are hopeless and helpless, and there's nothing they can do to change their spiritual condition. They are completely dependent on another, or they perish. We cannot save ourselves. There aren't enough righteous deeds in the world to put us in good standing before a holy God. God must take pity on us. God must reach down and give us life. What is the cause of this separation from God? It is sin. And only those who are poor in spirit can see that. They are the only ones who see that their greatest need is to be forgiven of their sin. And that is where the comfort comes in. The comfort doesn't come, the happiness doesn't come from being sad. The happiness comes from understanding we are forgiven. That's right. That's where the comfort comes from. Happy Happy are those who are in a continuous state of mourning over their sin, because they and only they shall be comforted, because they and only they can have the peace that transcends all understanding, because they know that they are forgiven, that there is no condemnation facing them, there is no judgment, no wrath facing them, that they will be with Jesus Christ forever and ever. Now look at where I'm recording from. Looks beautiful, tranquil, spacious, luscious, green. And it is those things. But you know what? It's much more than that as well. Are you ready? That's right. I am recording today from a cemetery. This is the view you had before. Right in front of me, though, is a cemetery. Now, my friends, everyone was going to mourn their sin. If you do it in this life, you are promised Christ's comfort because your sins are forgiven. If you do not, you will weep. You will mourn over your sin for an eternity. Everyone one day will face Jesus Christ. Do you want to face him on your own merit? Do you want to face him with your own good deeds? Good deeds that are nothing but filthy rags, the scriptures say. The only thing that can save you is faith in the completed work of Jesus Christ. You and you alone are promised comfort. May you have that comfort today. So next week, I want to look at why should someone who is redeemed, who is forgiven, why should they be in a continuous state of mourning over their sin? After all, we've been forgiven. But that is what Jesus says. So let's look at that next week, okay? Until then, thank you for tuning in, my friends. And I'll talk to you next week.